Hello, welcome to Relation Tales. Today we're going to have some more stories from Reddit. But before we start, it would be so much appreciated if you would subscribe to my channel, like the video if you enjoy it, and maybe leave a comment down below. These simple clicks would mean a lot to the future of this channel and really reward the effort that I put in every day. And now, without further ado, let's go. Here is my story. Caught my wife cheating with a secret social media profile, served her divorce, and took custody of my son. Hello, everyone. I'm working as a receptionist in a hotel. And I'm married to my wife, Jessica, 34, female, who is a nurse in a hospital. We've been married for 12 years and have a 10-year-old son. Our married life was simple and normal, just like every normal person, though financially. We suffered a lot and had great difficulty meeting the ends. Somehow we managed to do it. Jessica was a great partner and mother. She's a hardworking woman and took half the responsibility, which made it less difficult for both of us. I didn't make much money as a receptionist, so I had to do extra work in the food hub. So we were hardly present at the same time, but we cherished weekends a lot. Our son, Robert, used to spend his daytime with his grandparents, and in the evening, we both take him home at 9, usually. But sometimes, during Jessica's overnight day, Robert stays the night at his grandparents'. Our marriage was going smoothly, and things were just normal, with a mixture of peace and stress. However, I was grateful to have a partner like Jessica who never left my side in times of adversity and helped me through. We both were absent parents, and that really made me feel sad. But at the end of the day, it was for our own good. But things got weird and took a B-turn on the day she came back from her friend's wedding. It wasn't just a normal wedding but a luxurious 5-day event. I was also invited to the wedding, but due to my workload, I refused to go and stayed back. I also skipped it so I could save money. After she came back from the wedding, she was unusually quiet. I asked her if she was fine, and she got irritated by me. So I let her settle in the comfort space and gave her time. However, it started to trouble me more when she turned cold toward me. Not only did she become quiet, but she became irritated at me. But she was not telling me at all what was bothering her. After a week, she finally burst out of her frustration at the dinner table. I casually asked her which movie she wanted to see tonight. Initially, she ignored me and then got agitated at me for asking her such questions. I asked her what was wrong, and she told me that she regretted marrying me and that all her friends were having their dream lives. But as for her, she was suffering, and I was not doing much as a man. I failed to provide her with the life she wanted. Instead of watching movies at home, when will I take her to the theater? There was a lot more which she said and stood up from the table, leaving the half-finished plate on the table. I stayed silent because I saw it coming. One day she was going to snap at me, and it wasn't her fault for having such wishes. I decided to apply for jobs and interview more and more. The next day she didn't come home in her usual time, and she said she had extra hours at the hospital. I and Robert waited for her, but it got late, so I tucked him in bed. After a while, I slept too, and Jessica came back at 4 in the morning. I asked her to come and sleep next to me, and I would take care of the housework. I wrapped my arms around her waist and tried initiating sex, but she got irritated and asked me not to touch her. Obviously, I respect her consent, but the way she snapped at me made me feel like she was disgusted by me. I somehow managed to keep my thoughts calm and went back to sleep. The next day was Sunday. In the morning, I called her for breakfast, and she came down looking irritated. I asked her what was wrong, and she told me she wanted to buy herself a set of lingerie, and she wanted my card. In that situation, I couldn't say no to her, so I gave it to her. The card had money that I was saving up for Robert, and I felt quite uneasy. I asked her if she could wait a week until my salary came, then buy it instead of using my card. She threw my card on the table and asked me to keep it, calling me stingy that I even refused to buy her basic things. I held her wrist and apologized millions of times to make her accept the card. Again, she took the card, kissed my cheeks to say thank you, and left. Her phone was on the table, and it started buzzing. I took her phone and saw the text registration of some social media applications. I was going to open the phone, but Jessica came down, and I put the phone down on the table immediately. She took her phone and went outside. After a while, I took Robert to his grandparents, and on my way, I got a message from the bank about the debited money. It was $1,200. I stopped my car, and my hands were on my head thinking how crazy Jessica had been acting. I dropped off my son, called Jessica, and asked her to come back home. She came back home, and I asked her about the stuff she bought for $1,200 and how could she spend such a huge amount of money in just one go. I had been saving it for the family. Obviously, she kept listening, started crying, and kept blaming me, saying that I ruined her life and that I couldn't even fulfill her basic wishes. All her friends are living luxurious lives. It's just me living at rock bottom. I told her she was acting crazy and greedy and that she knew my financial condition before marrying me. I did my best, and I'm still doing it, and she shouldn't blame me for that. I told her that everything was fine a few months ago, but what's wrong now? Why was she acting like that suddenly? I don't know what happened to her. She sat in front of me with those guilt eyes and apologized to me for acting like that. She told me that on her friend's wedding day, all her friends were wearing branded clothes and carrying luxurious bags and accessories. Her friends kind of embarrassed her and asked her if her husband wasn't doing enough for her. I felt bad for her and forgave her. Along with that, I asked her to understand that not everyone can afford the same lifestyle, and we both were trying our best to resolve the situation, so she shouldn't make herself feel embarrassed. Instead, she should feel great that she was an independent woman. She hugged me, and we got intimate after so many days. I was happy and satisfied with the ups and downs because that's what makes the relationship more transparent and worth it. But soon, it went down again. Her phone started buzzing with her text messages from some app. But from the locked screen, I wasn't able to see which app it was. I was going to open the phone, but the password was incorrect. At first, I didn't mind and asked her for the password and told her about the text. She didn't give me any details or her password and casually took her phone and left the room. After Jessica fell asleep, I took the phone from her side and tried entering the password, but it failed again. I was annoyed and tried processing my thoughts as to why she had changed her password. As soon as I put her phone back, it started buzzing again with a series of notifications. It was troubling. In the morning, I went back to work and dropped her off. Yesterday was our wedding anniversary, and I did remember but pretended to be obvious as I prepared a surprise for her. After dropping her off at the hospital, I went back to my place and set it up beautifully with warm lights and lights. Robert was going to stay at his grandparents' tonight. I was so excited and happy while preparing her favorite meals. After placing everything nicely, the door opened and Jessica walked in. Her tired face changed into happiness as soon as she saw the house set up romantically. She ran toward me and hugged me tightly. We had a great time together, and finally, we sat down to talk. She told me that she loved the efforts I had put in, but if we had money, we could go to a fancy restaurant. She also started telling me about her friend whose husband gifted her a diamond ring. I started to feel insecure and realized that she didn't like what I did to make her happy, and she was not satisfied at all. I listened to her quietly, faking a smile. I didn't want to fight with her on my anniversary. To distract her, I started clicking pictures of us. But as soon as I was going to upload those, she asked me not to post these pictures, as her house and everything looked cheap, and she didn't want her friends to see them. She was so harsh and made everything seem worthless. The food and the flowers were worth nothing in front of her greedy eyes. Jessica was from a well-to-do family, but she was never greedy, or maybe she never showed that to me. She knew about my humble earnings, and she never complained about it. But suddenly, she's become so materialistic. I was still not able to process my thoughts. She went inside the bedroom and called me after a few minutes. She was wearing red lingerie and looked extremely ravishing. I went towards her and started kissing her, but she stopped and asked me to click a few pictures of hers. We had fun, and the rest of the time went fun. In the morning, I got a call from Robert's school, and I immediately drove off. After reaching the school, the teachers told me that he got into a fight. I asked Robert what was wrong that he punched his friend. He told me that his friend James was making fun of Mom, and he was telling everyone that Mom got fired from the hospital. James's mother was also a nurse in the same hospital as Jessica. I didn't want to believe what I heard. Maybe it was just a rumor. If it really happened, why didn't she tell me? I left for my work after that, but I just was not able to process all the changes going on in my life. I sensed something was wrong with Jessica. There's something she's hiding. I'm not doubting her outrightly that she's cheating on me, but she's definitely up to something. Well, I don't doubt that she bought lingerie, but it definitely wasn't for you. And as for her frivolous spending, that's just as bad as cheating. Not only that, but it's unfair of her to be comparing your relationship and your means to other friends and what their lives look like. Moreover, the fact that she was fired and didn't tell you speaks volumes. I mean, if she can't tell you that, what else isn't she telling you? Update 1. Hi everyone. It's been a week since my last update, and I was dealing with many issues and finally decided to divorce Jessica after knowing the truth. After hearing the rumor from Robert, I could not sleep for days and decided to find the truth. Today morning, I just drove off to the hospital. I asked the receptionist to call Jessica, introducing myself as her husband. The receptionist looked at me and then shared looks with the other lady on the counter. The receptionist told me that Jessica no longer worked there. I asked her since when. She said a month ago. I asked her the reason, but she didn't tell me. Her looks suggested that she knew, and it was pretty bad, but she didn't tell me. I was coming out of the hospital, confused and angry. I was wondering if she was fired. Then where was she working these days, and from where was she getting money? As I was about to get in the car, James's mother waved at me to stop. She apologized for James's behavior and how she shouldn't have talked about such things in front of her son. I nodded and said not to worry. She said she had something I needed to know. I knew what it was. She told me that after Jessica came back from her leave, the wedding leave, she started feeling very insecure and sad about her life, and the only thing she talked about was money. She took Jessica's cribbing to be normal stuff, as we all feel like that sometimes. But that didn't stop there. Jessica created an adult profile on social media. I was shocked and I felt numb. She said that Jessica got fired because she was caught making obscene videos and clicking naked pictures in the storeroom of the hospital. One of the janitors saw it and made videos of it and linked it to every staff, and that's how everyone got to know. I asked her for the name of the social media app, and she gave me her number and told me that she would send me an account link of Jessica's profile. She asked me to stop Jessica, or that would create problems for Robert in his school. I requested her not to discuss all of this in front of James, as that would further create problems for him. She agreed. I felt so disgusted after hearing this that I wanted to throw up. Never in my life have I felt so worthless, and I blamed myself for everything she was doing. It was because I failed to provide. After crying my heart out inside my car, I tried to gather all the evidence by myself and then confront Jessica because she was going to feed me lies on lies. While I was driving back, I remembered that a few days back, I was scrolling down my social media and saw a new profile on my suggestion. In the profile picture, there was a woman who was wearing red lingerie, but her face was hidden. I don't know why. Her back resembled that of Jessica's. I clicked on it, but it took me to an 18+ website for adult entertainment. I took that to be another promotion gimmick of an adult dating app, and I ignored it. Now I realize that the social media app shows you suggestions if the person is in your contact list. That woman was definitely Jessica. The dots started to connect, and I felt uneasy and anxious. In the evening when I reached home, I found several packages on the couch, dresses, heels, bags, and whatnot lying around that were just bought out of the store. I took out the bill from the sofa and couldn't breathe for a moment after seeing that she bought a $900 lipstick. Jessica came out of the room and looked scared to see me. I showed her the bill and asked her where did she get all the money. She threw the stuff from her hand on the floor and told me that she regrets marrying me and that she feels confined inside the walls of poverty. She wanted a few things for herself, and she got it. What's such a big deal about it? She was like, why does my life always have to be about our son in this house? Why can't I spend my savings on something I love? I almost laughed at her manipulative tactics, but pretended not to know the truth. I took a deep breath and again asked her, where did she get all the money? She looked at me and told her that she got promoted to a different healthcare center, and they paid her a good amount. I nodded and went outside for a walk. James's mother texted me Jessica's adult account details, and without even opening the account, I knew it was Jessica. I put my hands on my face and didn't have the courage to open it and see for myself, but the anger and the insults she put me through today were humiliating, only to realize that she sold her body to the public for materials and ruined our 13 years of marriage. I searched the username, and it showed the exact same account I had on suggestions a few days ago. I made a new account, created a whole fake profile, and did everything that was needed. I found her account, but to see her content, I had to subscribe, and it cost $200. I paid that amount. A big amount for me, but a small amount to pay to save myself from daily humiliation. Her profile said your personal nurse, and after taking the subscription, the account finally opened. My palms were sweaty, my mouth felt bitter, and I almost threw up when I saw those pictures. Those pictures and videos were scary, but the comments were terrifying. Half of the stuff was hidden, and they cost such high rates. Not only this, but she also posted the pictures I clicked on the day of our anniversary. The same pictures now look disgusting to me. The comments were outrageous, and I couldn't look at that anymore, more like I couldn't look at her anymore, and immediately thought of divorce. There was no time to delay, so I called my brother and asked him to help me prepare the divorce paper. He worked for an attorney. When I came back home, she wasn't there. She left a note, leaving for the night shift. The fun part is she's jobless. I don't want to spell this out, but God, I know what kind of night shift she's into. I don't think I'll be able to sleep until I confront her, and humiliate her the way she insulted me, and for that, I didn't have to do anything because she did it herself. I'm so sorry. Opus your right to seek a divorce at this point. She's a lost cause. I think the worst part is she's more interested in making money for herself than to create a good and happy life for your child. I mean, yes, it's important a mother treats herself every now and again, but your wife has seemed to lose sight of what's important. Not only that, but you're out $200. Update 2. It's been a while since the last update as I was dealing with severe trauma, and the divorce process was harder to process. So the next morning after my last update, I woke up to Jessica's yelling at Robert, asking him to stay the F away from her expensive things. He was apparently messing around with the expensive stuff she bought last night. This brought anger down my body. I asked Robert to go inside his room. I gave her a cold stare and asked her again, Where did she get this much money? She put her phone aside and asked me if I had lost my hearing ability. I laughed at her comment and told her that at least I didn't lose respect for myself the way she did. She looked completely oblivious and asked me what I was talking about. I told her to continue with your personal nurse business and that the divorce papers would reach her soon. She understood where I was coming from. It was her username on the adult website. She sat on the sofa and felt ashamed. I told her not to feel ashamed or regret this after getting caught because it was her own choice. She started crying and saying that she couldn't take all the insults she went through in front of her friends and cousins when they showed off all of their luxurious things, and she was leading a mediocre lifestyle. So she took that path and bought herself the expensive stuff. I yelled at her that a modest lifestyle is much better than showing your naked body to the world. And if she still wanted to pursue that, she should have told me. I know it's her body and her choice BS, but she need not keep me in the dark and would have done that openly. I told her that I knew why she got fired from the hospital and that my innocent boy had to suffer the bullies in his school because of her fantasy and greed. Her body language suggested she had no remorse. I felt like she was going to continue doing this after our divorce, and every tear was just an act of being caught and not guilty of what she had been doing. She said we could figure out a middle ground, and I couldn't take our son away from her. I told her that was impossible to spend my life with someone who could show her nudity and nakedness in front of the whole world just for the sake of easy money. I know she didn't care about our son at all. I asked her if she had any idea how humiliating it was going to be for Robert when he got to know from his friends or people around him that his mother sold her nudes for a living. Have you thought of the consequences we are going to face because of your greed? She remained silent and then started arguing, saying that it was partially my fault and that she had no choice. I told her she clearly had a choice, and she chose to be instead of being broke. Her face disgusted me, and I left the house with Robert for my parents. I overtime as many jobs as I could for her and my son. And still, she was an ungrateful, disgusting, immoral witch, and I could never accept such a person back in my life. I've been living with my parents for the last 1 week. Jessica didn't try to contact me or our son. The divorce paper is supposed to come in the next few days, and I want this to be over as soon as possible. Oh wow, so she's suddenly interested in the son that she didn't seem to care about before. I'm glad you got you and Robert out of there. I don't believe her tears were sincere at all. She could care less. All she cares about is her expensive lipsticks. None of this was your fault. Opus none of it. Update 3. Hello, everybody. I finally got rid of my ex-wife from my life. It took days for the divorce papers to reach her. During the divorce process, Jessica and her parents filed a case against me for complete custody of Robert. I had almost lost the case. They made me look like a poor and unavailable father who never did anything for my son. Like I said, her parents are well off, and they claimed that I won't be able to provide a good life for Robert. That's when I made them ask her about her job and if she is a suitable guardian for a 10-year-old. Obviously, I cannot leave the custody of my son to Jessica's parents. I told the judges and showed the proof of her immoral acts and how her reputation will take a toll on Robert's mental health and social value. I don't want my son to go through bullying. And that's how I got the complete custody of him. Robert himself was not attached to his mother, but I did allow her to meet him whenever she wanted. Jessica's parents and her siblings blamed me for her actions. They said that she chose that path because I couldn't give her the life she deserved. They never wanted Jessica to marry me. And this whole scenario gave them another opportunity to make fun of me. The joke is on them, actually, if they really can see anyway. I don't give a crap about anyone now. I'm just happy to have a peaceful life with my son. I lost a fortune going through this, but it was worth it. As for her, I heard she's still on that adult site selling her nudes to make money. Thankfully, I didn't forgive her and dodged a bullet. I can't even believe people chose to side with her when you've been the one taking care of Robert for God knows when. On top of that, she definitely doesn't have Robert's best interest at heart. From the sounds of it, she's just interested in making money so she can spend money and fit in with her rich friends. If she wants to send nudes, go right ahead. Her business is her business, but she can't have her cake and eat it too. If she wanted a lavish life, she should have looked somewhere else. Not all life's riches are materialistic. The richest person can have the least money in the bank but the warmest, most loved heart. What do you make of all this? Thank you for joining us today. That's the story. If you liked it, please support us with a like as well as subscribe to our channel. Write in the comments what you think about the story. Thank you for being here with us. Hello, welcome to Relation Tales. Today we're going to have some more stories from Reddit. But before we start, it would be so much appreciated if you would subscribe to my channel, like the video if you enjoy it, and maybe leave a comment down below. These simple clicks would mean a lot to the future of this channel and really reward the effort that I put in every day. And now, without further ado, let's go. Here is my story. Monica screamed in fright when she saw me and immediately covered her naked body with a blanket. Denny also turned around, his eyes opened wide, his hands hurriedly gathering clothes scattered all over the bedroom, but a vase flying past his head did not allow him to do that. The man in his underwear jumped out of the open window and ran to his car. My wooden bat flew after him and hit the headlight, breaking it. The car drove quickly away from my yard, disappearing among the narrow streets. All this happened within 1 minute. Yes, you understood correctly. I just caught my wife cheating in our house, in our bedroom, in our bed, and I just came home to change clothes because I got very dirty at work. My new colleague, a young and cute girl, was extremely clumsy. She was carrying several cups of coffee and tripped over her foot. The hot drink spilled on me, smearing my shirt and pants. My boss saw this and was an understanding woman, so she offered me to go home and change my clothes. Under Monica's plaintive crying and excuses, I went to the closet and started changing. I deliberately did not react to her words. It seemed that if I talked to her, all the anger inside me would explode. I could do something illegal and violent towards her. It takes all the willpower to maintain outward calmness. The maximum I could do was tell her to pack up and leave before I returned from work. I left the house, got into the car, and drove to work. My condition showed that something had happened because my colleagues began asking about my health. They said I looked like I had just returned from a war. Well, it wasn't far from the truth. There was a real war going on inside me. Until the end of the workday, I just sat in front of the computer monitor, not reacting to what was happening around me. I only wanted to go to a bar and get drunk with my best friend. That's exactly what I did immediately after work. I called my friend and asked him to meet me at a bar near my house. Probably. My tone made it clear that something was wrong because he agreed to come over soon without further question. Now, I vaguely remember that evening. We drank a lot of whiskey and beer and talked about my divorce from Monica. My best friend helped me catch a taxi and walked me to the doors of my house. Now, this house looked different from a cozy and homely shelter. It became too quiet and empty. There were only my shoes in the hallway. The bedroom looked neat, as if nothing had happened there. The closets, chests of drawers, bathroom, and even the kitchen were empty. Monica took all her stuff, even her potted plants were gone somewhere. It felt like someone had just moved into this house and hadn't finished settling in yet. I couldn't stay calm in the bedroom. Now, it's the most hated, disgusting room for me, so I was sleeping on the couch in the living room. In the morning, my head was hurting terribly. It seemed it was about to split into pieces from the hellish, pulsating pain. I peeled my eyes open with difficulty and looked around. The sunlight coming through the undrawn curtains hurt my eyes. I sat on the couch, and the room started spinning. Nausea rose in my throat. I barely managed to run to the bathroom, where I threw up the remnants of yesterday's drinking. The hangover weighed on me like a truck. My head was buzzing, my mouth was dry, and my stomach cramped. With difficulty, I forced myself to take a shower, brush my teeth, shave, and get dressed. Every movement was incredibly hard for me. Finally, I returned to the living room and collapsed on the couch. I needed to get ready for work, but the thought alone made everything dark before my eyes. I couldn't imagine functioning in this state. I lazily reached for the phone to call my boss and warn her I wouldn't come in today. However, my gaze fell on Monica's photo on the nightstand. The memories of yesterday hit me hard. Hatred and disappointment overwhelmed me with new force. I barely suppressed those emotions. The main thing now is to survive this hellish workday. I'll see what happens next. Despite the bad hangover, I decided to go to work. I felt even worse in the empty house full of memories of Monica, so I wanted to switch my attention to other tasks and change the scenery. My colleagues immediately noticed my detached state. They joked that I overindulged with alcohol last night. I couldn't take it anymore and told them the truth. How I caught Monica with her lover. How he jumped out the window. How my wife left the house. My colleagues were horrified and involuntarily cursed my wife. Well, indeed, my situation could only be described with obscene language. They expressed sincere sympathy and support. Their compassion touched me. At least here, I was understood and not judged. It gave me the strength to survive the rest of the workday, even though I could barely think straight and couldn't focus on simple tasks because of the hangover. After work, that same clumsy girl offered me coffee and a little talk. She asked what I was planning to do now. I decided to divorce Monica. This marriage no longer made sense to me. In the next few days, I will go to a lawyer's consultation to learn about the legal details of divorce and protect my rights as best I can. I was also very worried about our children with Monica. They are only 5 and 7 years old. It will be hard for them to endure their parents' divorce. I wanted to give them as much attention as possible, take them to parks, movies, and zoos, in short, do everything to make them feel needed and loved during this difficult time. Besides, in case of a divorce, I wanted to fight for custody of the children. I felt that Monica couldn't care for them properly after finding a lover. I didn't like the children to grow up in a dysfunctional environment. Their safety and comfort was my top priority overall. Despite the shock and pain of betrayal, I was determined. The main thing is to go through the divorce with dignity and minimize losses for the children, and life will get better in time. After talking to my colleague, I decided to call my parents. Our children were staying with them on vacation. I bluntly announced that I caught Monica cheating and was planning a divorce. My parents were shocked. They had no idea there were problems in our relationship. Despite the shock, they promised to care for the grandchildren for as long as needed. "Don't worry, son," my mom said. "Leave the kids with us for as long as you need. You're going through tough times right now, and your dad and I will be happy to spend more time with our grandchildren. You know how much we love them." My dad also expressed support. What an atrocity on Monica's part. I would have never thought so, but you're doing the right thing getting divorced. And don't worry about the kids, they'll be fine with us. I felt relieved. At least I didn't have to worry about the kids for now. Meanwhile, I could focus on the divorce proceedings and restoring my mental balance after these events. Incidentally, this difficult day was the first time I even looked at my phone. After calling my parents, I saw dozens of missed calls and texts from my wife. Monica was probably trying to justify herself, begging for forgiveness or cursing in response. But I didn't care. I didn't even read those messages. I deleted everything without looking. Instead, I asked my acquaintances if they had contacts of a good divorce lawyer. One friend gave me the number of an excellent specialist his sister went to. I immediately called that lawyer. Luckily, he was available the next day. We agreed to meet and discuss everything. I felt confident that this experienced attorney would help me properly handle the divorce and defend my interests. However, the lawyer cooled my ardor. I had no right to kick Monica out of our common home. That was considered a legal eviction of a spouse, and she could easily sue me for that. Moreover, Monica was fully entitled to return home at any time and demanded that I continue living with her in marriage until the official divorce. In the current situation, the law was clearly on her side. If she does sue me, it would greatly complicate the whole divorce process and reduce my chances of getting custody of the children in the future. I was horrified by this news, so I'm powerless to do anything against Monica. I'll have to endure her presence in my own home for a long time and also risk losing my children because of her potential lawsuit. It felt like a nightmare. All my determination vanished in an instant. In your situation, it's very likely that Monica will get custody and you'll pay alimony. Our objective now is to minimize your losses after the divorce, said the lawyer. On the one hand, now I know my legal prospects and options regarding the divorce. That was useful to understand further steps. The lawyer competently answered all my questions. On the other hand, some things burdened and scared me, especially that Monica could return home at any moment. I wouldn't be able to do anything about it, or she could significantly complicate my getting custody of the children. I felt relieved that I now knew all the nuances of the divorce process, but at the same time, I felt anxious and annoyed by my helplessness. I was also worried about the future fate of the children. This mixture of conflicting emotions made me feel on edge one minute and slightly calmer the next. I walked down the street, absorbed in my thoughts and worries. I had difficult decisions about how to proceed in such an uncertain situation. Over the next few days, I tried to keep it together and not lose my mind over the uncertainty. Monica kept calling me, but I stubbornly didn't pick up. At the same time, I expected her to show up at the door with suitcases every day. On Friday, I picked the kids up from my parents to spend the weekend with them. On Saturday, we went together to our favorite pizzeria and played bowling. The children were delighted. We had a great time. Everything was fine for a moment, just a dad with his kids spending a carefree day. However, closer to evening, the doorbell suddenly rang unexpectedly when the kids and I were watching a cartoon before bed. I froze, realizing it was Monica. The kids happily screamed, "Mom came," and rushed to meet her. She stood at the door with a huge suitcase and several bags. The guilty smile on her face said it all. "Hi, can I come in? After all, this is still my house, too." The perfect day collapsed in an instant. When the children went to their rooms and fell asleep, Monica tried to talk to me, but I nipped all her attempts in the bud. I didn't want to talk about anything. All I said coldly was, "I need to go to bed. I have work tomorrow," after which I started preparing my sleeping place on the couch in the living room. In the morning, I woke up to a noise in the kitchen. Monica was making breakfast for the whole family as if nothing had happened. When I entered the room, she smiled warmly. "Good morning, I made pancakes, your favorite. The kids already ate and went to get ready for school. Sit down, let's have breakfast." She hoped to establish contact and talk to me with such homemaking gestures, but I had no appetite. I silently poured myself some coffee, took a sip, and put the cup in the sink. "I have to get to work," I grumbled, heading for the exit. Monica's whole family breakfast just disgusted me. I wasn't ready to talk to her, maybe later. When I returned from work that evening, my wife approached me again. Her eyes were red from crying. "Listen, I know you don't want to talk to me right now, but sooner or later, we'll have to do it," she sobbed. Before continuing, "I didn't mean to betray you. That night, we had a little too much to drink with colleagues after work, and Denny gave me a ride home, and somehow it just happened. I swear, it was only once. I regret it. Let's try to preserve the family for the children's sake. However, her excuses only made me angrier. Impaired judgment indeed. It was more like she just decided to misbehave at my expense. I don't know what happened with you and how many times, I replied coldly, but either way, I'm filing for divorce. Our relationship is over. Now excuse me, I need to rest after a working day. I turned to go to the bathroom and take a shower. I had no desire to listen to her pathetic excuses. The days before the divorce hearing were pure hell for me. I went to work like a zombie, operating on autopilot. My boss even offered me a paid leave so I could deal with family issues. But I refused because sitting at home would be even worse than just numbly functioning at work. That's where I least wanted to be. I only came home because of the kids. It was worth enduring for their sake. As for Monica, she was trying to appease me before the divorce. She cooked my favorite dishes, kept the house spotless, spoke to me gently, and tried not to bother me unnecessarily. A couple of times, she even tried to seduce me physically. But her reconciliation attempts only angered me more. I didn't want anything from her except for this nightmare called divorce to end as soon as possible. Of course, the kids noticed that their parents had been acting strange lately. I was gloomy and pensive, constantly distracted from all conversations. Monica was also not at all like herself, quiet and sad. The children were worried. They didn't understand what was happening with Mom and Dad. One day, my son asked me, "Dad, has something happened between you and Mom? You argue all the time, my sister and I are concerned." I decided to talk honestly with the kids and explain the situation in terms they could understand. I gently informed them that their mom and I no longer love each other like we used to and that soon we will stop being husband and wife, meaning we'll get a divorce. They were upset by this news, but I assured them that we would continue to love and spend time with them, just living separately now. I promised they could always count on my support and care, no matter what. This reassured the kids a little. Monica kept desperately trying to regain my affection. She kept apologizing, begging me to give her a chance to regain my trust. But I only felt irritated. It seemed she didn't want to accept reality. Our relationship was over. I decided to take an indirect approach to make her understand. "All right," I said. "If you really regret it and want to regain my trust, you'll have to do something first. Take a lie detector test to answer all my questions honestly. Second, get tested for sexually transmitted infections to rule out any contagion. If the results come back negative, I may be able to forgive you, but not before." I understood these conditions would sound humiliating to her. I wasn't interested in the lie detector or test results. Still, I needed Monica to realize the gravity of the situation and the consequences of her actions and see how much she had betrayed my trust in her. Maybe then she would finally back off and stop clinging to our dead relationship. To my surprise, my wife agreed to these terms. She kept delaying the lie detector, apparently fearing uncomfortable questions, but she immediately got tested for infections, being confident of a negative result. However, an unpleasant surprise awaited her a few days later. The results showed that Monica had tested positive for HIV. I was shocked by the news. In a panic, I immediately got tested, too. Those were the most stressful days of my life as I awaited results. Thankfully, my indicators came back clean. Despite my wife's infidelity, I had avoided infection. But I now had the opportunity for a special revenge I just had to take advantage of. I knew Denny was Monica's colleague and worked with her in the same office. I understood what a commotion it would cause if it turned out colleagues were having intimate relations and transmitting a dangerous infection to each other. Moreover, there was a risk Monica and Denny had slept with each other and with other subordinates. Getting them fired and subsequently disgraced would be the perfect revenge. After receiving Monica's test results, I scheduled a meeting with the head of the company where my wife worked, explaining the urgency of the matter beforehand to his secretary. At the meeting, I relayed the situation. Monica had cheated on me with her colleague Denny, possibly right in the office, violating corporate ethics. As a result, she had contracted HIV. I demanded they immediately fire her and Denny since their irresponsible behavior could jeopardize the health of all other employees. I reminded the manager that by law, the employer bears responsibility for the health and safety of employees. I described the scale of damage if these two had infected others. In this case, the employer had legal grounds to terminate my wife and her lover to ensure the safety of the remaining staff and visitors. The gravity of it quickly dawned on the manager. He promised to investigate and take necessary action within his authority and current legislation. After such news, he would have no choice but to fire Monica and Denny and demand all employees undergo mandatory HIV testing. When Monica found out about her dismissal, she furiously attacked me. "It was you who lied to them, wasn't it? You accused me of things that never happened. In reality, you were the one cheating on me all these years, and you infected me with HIV. But now you're framing me as the guilty one," she yelled. I just bitterly smirked at these delusional accusations. Of course, it was just a desperate attempt at manipulation on her part. After all, according to my tests, I'm completely healthy and could not have transmitted HIV to her in any way. However, the mandatory HIV testing conducted at Monica's company revealed a grim picture. In addition to my wife and Denny, several other employees had also tested positive. It looked like there were some promiscuous sexual relations between colleagues there, and Monica was far from the only victim of that debauched atmosphere. Thanks to this situation, I now had a real chance of getting custody of our children. According to my lawyer, unlike Monica, I could now prove that I was a healthy and responsible parent. I don't have HIV or other diseases. My wife led a moral and chaotic lifestyle, as evidenced by her workplace behavior, and could influence the children badly. Due to her illness, Monica would not be able to fully care for and provide for the kids, especially now that she was unemployed. I was financially stable and could give the children everything they needed. Thus, if my lawyer and I substantiated all these points in court, I would have every reason to get full custody of the children after the divorce from Monica. Divorce is like entering a new reality where you look at your life with a clean slate. Fortunately, after all that legal tangle, I became a real single parent with 2 kids. Finally, the nightmare was over. I could breathe freely again. I had to sell our house to divide assets with my ex-wife. I temporarily moved in with my parents and the kids while I saved up enough money to buy my own house or decide to take out a loan. My parents' support was invaluable, especially when I went to work. Someone had to look after the children in my absence. Work became my island of safety and stability in this sea of change. My boss knew about the difficult family situation, so she sometimes cut me some slack, allowing me to leave work early. I turned down vacation time because I wanted to find a new home or apartment as soon as possible to get settled so my kids could live comfortably. Gradually, everything fell into place. Calm returned to my life, not my ex-wife's. Finding herself in dire straits, Monica sued Denny for deliberate HIV infection. Fear and anxiety staring reality in the face. That's what she was experiencing now. Her life became like a picture torn to pieces. Every trial was like a blow to her emotional state. Under stress and uncertainty about the future, Monica lost weight. Her eyes reflected fatigue and melancholy. I used to be used to seeing joy on her face, but now it was the shadow of a past life. The lack of peace and the storm of emotions took their toll on her appearance. The sparkle in her eyes faded, and her skin lost its freshness. When she came to visit the children, it was clear she wasn't paying proper attention to herself. Her hair was lifeless, and her clothes didn't fit as well. She seemed to have forgotten how important it is to care for herself. My parents, having noticed these changes, expressed concern about her condition, but she seemed to have retreated far into her inner world, consumed by legal troubles and struggles. Time was not kind to her, and stress left its mark on her appearance, underlining how difficult her days had become. Monica tried to see the kids, but these were usually brief visits. She lacked the strength and resources for regular interaction. Talking about how she would care for the children now sounded like empty promises. I understood she could not provide the care they needed. The lawsuits and her fight for her rights had consumed her so much that she could not fully be present in the children's lives. My parents became a reliable pillar of support for the grandchildren in the absence of maternal care while I was building our new life. My ex-wife was getting entangled in the maze of lawsuits and her difficulties. The divorce revealed our disagreements and Monica's inability to perform the role of caring mother fully. Life after divorce is taking many small steps. First, you dive into a storm of emotions. Then gradually come to realism, a new apartment, new routines, new responsibilities. But somewhere along the way, you realize you're okay, can handle it, and are not alone in this swim. Family, children, they are your foothold. So, I move forward, taking little steps in my new life, rebuilding it anew. That's the story. If you liked it, please support us with a like as well as subscribe to our channel. Write in the comments what you think about the story. Thank you for being here with us. Welcome to Relation Tales. Please like this video and subscribe. Relation Tales. Hear the story. My wife's boss, an alpha male, wanted to sleep with my wife. In response, I exacted a harsh revenge against this blatant disrespect to our marriage. I got home 15 minutes ago and was taken aback that my wife Isabella wasn't there yet. She often stays late at work, but typically she's home before me, with dinner ready as I enter. I was just about to call her to discuss dinner plans when my phone rang. "Hello dear, are you still at work?" I asked. "Yes, but I'm on my way now. I have a surprise for you," she replied. "Should I start dinner or pick something up?" I wondered. She said there'd be no time for that tonight. 20 minutes later, Isabella walked in looking somewhat unkempt, her clothes wrinkled, stockings missing, and her makeup and hair slightly disordered. "Tough day," I remarked, observing her state. She quickly came to me, hugged me, and gazing into my eyes, whispered, "You know I love you deeply, and that you'd do anything for me, right?" I affirmed, ready to do nearly anything for her. She began to explain that she'd been sharing our relationship dynamics with her boss, who had some ideas that intrigued her. She confessed the concepts were quite erotic and stirred her fantasies. I acknowledged that while I let her make many decisions, major ones like house purchases, car choices, and financial planning were mutual. My willingness to make her happy doesn't equate to submissiveness. It's simply my expression of love. You know how you generally let me decide on most things, and you're so loving and kind, allowing me almost anything I want. Well, recently, I've been discussing our relationship with my boss Ben, and he's suggested a few ideas that might make sense. He introduced me to stories about submissive men who are dominated by their partners and how it can positively impact their relationship. I must admit, Peter, these stories were quite erotic and really stirred my imagination, Isabella explained. Yes, Isabella, I am kind to you and give you leeway in decisions that aren't critical or life-altering. But remember, I take the lead in significant matters like choosing our house, cars, and investments and major financial choices. However, I do like to let you decide on things that matter to you, things that make you happy like vacations, movies, restaurants, and even my clothes. But that doesn't make me submissive. It's just my way of showing how much I love you and want you to be happy. My dad once told me the secret to a content, stress-free marriage is not sweating the small stuff. He also reminded me that almost everything is small and that life should be lived as positively and joyfully as possible. Okay, Peter, but I think my boss might have a point. When I compare you to him, he's assertive, powerful, and takes charge. People respect his strong personality and follow his lead, not the other way around. He told me he's an alpha male, dominant and at the top of the social hierarchy, whereas people like you, though loving and kind, are more beta, inclined to be dominated and submissive. They might not realize it, but it's a trait that's waiting to emerge. To me, this sounds like some kind of superficial pop psychology, and I completely disagree. But what are you trying to say? I asked, noticing a shift in her confidence as she spoke. Peter, my boss said he's going to be dominant with me in a way I've never experienced. He's boasted about his size and his prowess, and he's been demonstrating it in his office for the past few weeks. I know it's wrong, and I've probably crossed a line I shouldn't have as a young married woman, but it's been really exhilarating, Isabella confessed. For the past few weeks, I've been fantasizing about him seducing me at work, Isabella shared. He thinks you'd actually like the idea of me being close to him, suggesting that your submissive side might even enjoy watching. And if not, he said that you and I would have the most incredible sex of our lives when I returned to you after being with him. I looked at her, expecting this to be some kind of joke, but then it hit me that she was serious. Isabella, you can't be serious. How could you think I'd be okay with this? I asked, incredulous. Peter, I know you love me and want me to be happy. I believe this will elevate our love and our sex life to a whole new level, she insisted. Isabella, are you telling me you've been intimate with your boss? Why on earth would you do that? I demanded, struggling to comprehend her actions. Isabella, oh no, Peter, I would never cheat on you, I exclaimed in disbelief. But you already have. You've had intimate conversations with Ben. And you've told me about touching his boyfriend. Did he? I trailed off, seeking confirmation. She averted her gaze, unable to meet my eyes, and quietly said, No, Peter, not yet. He's waiting in the driveway. We're going to talk, and then he'll come up to our bedroom. We're going to be together. And you can watch if you want. Ben would like that. If not, you can come and get me afterward, and I'll be all yours, ready for anything you've ever dreamed of. Are you kidding me? The thought of being with you after you've been with him is revolting, I retorted, disgusted. And what now, Isabella? Because I'm saying no and demanding that he leave immediately. Isabella's expression turned to one of panic. I could tell she hadn't anticipated this response, and now it seemed she was going to take a more assertive stance. Isabella, you seem to have been influenced by your boss, I said, struggling to grasp the situation. You love me, and I want this. You've always let me have my way. And I've decided this will be good for us. Let's try it just once, though I'm sure it'll be so amazing we'll want to continue. Now, I'll go upstairs to get ready for him. And for you, you can let him in, then wait until we're done. I know you'll want this because you love me, and I believe it will be great for us. Isabella, I see where you stand, and what this means for our marriage and vows. So, go ahead and get ready. And I'll have a quick talk with your visitor, I replied, my voice heavy with emotion. He's not my lover, Peter. This is just about intense, dominant encounters. I will always love only you and will be yours forever, and you'll be mine, Isabella insisted, moving to hug and kiss me. But I pushed her away, my eyes filled with surprise and pain. Well, don't wait on my account, Isabella. It's clear you're set on doing this regardless of what I say. If not now, then eventually, perhaps even without telling me. But you've already betrayed me, so go upstairs and get ready, I said, the weight of her betrayal heavy in my voice. Her expression shifted to guilt and shock at my words, but she turned to leave. Halfway up the stairs, she looked back, asserting, "This is going to be a game changer." "Yes, Isabella, it certainly will be a game changer. You've made your choice," I replied, feeling a mix of anger and resignation. After she walked upstairs, I went to her purse and took out her car keys, house keys, and phone. From her wallet, I removed our joint credit card. Then, I headed to the kitchen, pulled out a dish towel, some zip ties from a utility drawer, and a large carving knife. With these in hand, I went outside to confront Ben. Ben was in his car, engrossed in his phone. As I approached, he rolled down the window and said smugly, "Okay, little Peter, I assume your wife filled you in. Don't worry, I'll still let her be with you, at least for now, until she's totally under my control." "You're going to enjoy this," Ben started, but I didn't let him finish. I launched into the most forceful left hook I could muster, striking him squarely in the nose. The sound of a crunch confirmed I'd inflicted damage. Handing him a kitchen towel, I said, "Here, you might need this, Ben." As he brought it to his nose, I quickly looped a zip tie around his left wrist, secured it to the headrest bar, and tightened it. Next, I opened the car door and delivered another left hook, this time targeting his lower body, right where he boasted his manhood was. He doubled over in pain, curling up as much as the zip tie on his wrist allowed. His right hand clutched the steering wheel while he screamed in agony. Seizing the moment, I swiftly zip-tied his right hand to the steering wheel. Leaning close to his face, I taunted, "So, the big, strong, dominant alpha male is having trouble now, huh? What a pathetic situation you've got yourself into. You've misjudged this scenario horribly, and you're about to learn from your mistakes. Unfortunately for you, Isabella is expecting something epic, so let's not disappoint her." I picked up a water hose lying on the grass, equipped with a sturdy steel nozzle. With a swing, I shattered the car's side window, sending fragments scattering across the seat and floor. Then, I moved to the front, striking the windshield. While it didn't break, I managed to fill it with cracks and dents, as if it had been pelted with golf ball-sized debris. I also smashed the headlights, finding a grim satisfaction in the act. Returning to the driver's side, I chuckled, "Looks like your car could use some work." Then, pulling a knife from my back pocket, I quickly leaned towards the car and pressed the blade against the jugular vein in his neck. In my most menacing tone, I hissed, "How many times have you been with my wife? Did you try to convince her that I would accept this?" Fear flashed in his eyes as he stuttered. "Only twice, these last few weeks. It meant nothing, it was just sex. Please, let me go, and I promise you'll never see me again." I regarded him with contempt, seeing him as nothing more than despicable. "I'm not going to end you right now, but make no mistake, if I get wind of any trouble from the police or any repercussions from our little chat today, I will come after you. If you involve the police, I might end up in jail, maybe get out on bail, or even serve time. But regardless, there will come a day when I will find you, maybe in a parking lot, maybe in an elevator at work. And when that day comes, I will finish what I started. It's your choice. This could be the last time you ever see me, or you could spend the next week, month, or year looking over your shoulder, waiting for the moment I decide to end you." With these words, I leaned over him, stuck the knife into the passenger seat and said, "Isabella will need this to free you, so you can either drive her away or maybe she'll take you to the emergency room. Doesn't matter, just make sure you get her out of my sight." I walked into the house, and as soon as Isabella heard the front door close, she called from the bedroom, "Is that you, Ben? Come up here. Have you sorted things out with Peter?" I was taken aback by her naivety. "Isabella, Ben's in the car. He wants you to come out and talk." "I think he's reconsidering," I replied. A minute later, Isabella came down, wearing the underwear I'd bought her and a hastily donned robe. "What happened, Peter? Did you reassure him everything's okay?" she asked. "I made it clear his future depends on his actions. You should probably go out and talk to him," I responded. She looked at me, puzzled, and said, "Peter, please remember that I love you, and this is going to strengthen us." "Of course, Isabella," I replied, masking my true feelings. Feeling a newfound sense of resolve, I locked the front door immediately after Isabella walked out. As I made my way upstairs, I heard Isabella screaming, "What have you done, Peter? Come here." I ignored her pleas and went into our bedroom, pulling out a suitcase. I quickly gathered a handful of Isabella's underwear, bras, and socks from her drawers. Then, I grabbed some t-shirts, shirts, jeans, and sweaters from her closet, packing them into the suitcase. In the bathroom, I hastily threw as much of her makeup and personal items as I could fit into the suitcase. Returning to the closet, I grabbed a pair of her tennis shoes. Walking to the guest bedroom at the front of the house, I opened the window and shouted, "Isabella, you might need this," as I dumped the suitcase onto the driveway. Some perfume bottles might have broken, but that was no longer my concern. Then, I threw her tennis shoes, aiming for her, but she managed to dodge them. She looked up at me with tears in her eyes and cried, "Peter, please, what are you doing?" I replied, I was sure this was what you wanted. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to make you angry or hurt you. I can't believe how harsh and brutal you were to Ben. He's my boss, for goodness sake. Please, Peter, let me in so we can talk about how to get through this, Isabella pleaded, her voice laced with disbelief. Isabella, I can't even begin to express how absurd you've sounded since you got home with this scheme to turn me into a cuckold. I'm wondering if you've had a stroke, or on drugs, or maybe I just never realized how petty and pathetic you truly are. Regardless, it doesn't matter now. I want you to leave. Take your lover to the hospital. But ask him what will happen if any word of today's events gets back to me, from the police or anyone else. I'll pack the rest of your things in bags and you can tell me where to drop them off. But don't you dare come back to this house again, I said firmly. With that, I slammed the window shut, went downstairs, opened the front door, and threw her purse at her. It hit her in the chest before I slammed the door closed. I couldn't resist adding, "Is this enough for you, Isabella?" as a final remark. I locked the door behind me and headed to the kitchen to open my second beer. It dawned on me that I needed to contact my lawyer immediately, in case the police were involved, and also to seek a recommendation for a good divorce attorney. Glancing out the front window, I saw Ben yelling and cursing at Isabella as she cut the zip ties. She then placed her suitcase in the trunk. Ben got into the back seat, lying down, and Isabella, sobbing and looking utterly shocked, got into the car and reversed out of the driveway. As the adrenaline in my system began to subside and I started to relax, I was utterly astonished by the day's events, how my wife could derail so drastically, and how I had reacted in anger towards her boss. I was alarmingly close to causing him serious harm and now realized he just wasn't worth it. I couldn't help but laugh at the nonsense he had fed Isabella about being an alpha and me being a beta. Was out of love and a desire for a happy life, a happy lifelong marriage. But Isabella completely misunderstood my kindness, as if I were a submissive beta personality who would let her fool me with someone like Ben. I never saw this coming. In the following days, Isabella stayed away from the house. I kept receiving calls from unknown cell phones, which I assumed were from Isabella since I had taken her phone, pleading for me to call her back on a specific number to talk things through. I knew a confrontation was inevitable. Since the police hadn't shown up, I felt relieved, thinking I had narrowly escaped trouble. Now, it was time to close this painful chapter. I called Isabella and told her to return in an hour for a talk. After hanging up, I finished packing everything in the house that belonged to her and waited on the porch. Isabella eventually drove up in her car, which she must have retrieved from work. I wasn't sure if she was staying with Ben, her parents, friends, or at a motel. Surprisingly, I found myself not too interested in where she had been. She got out of the car, waved at me hesitantly, and then came to sit next to me on the porch steps, her face. Isabella's face was a canvas of emotions, including fear, shame, guilt, and apprehension. Her swollen, blotchy appearance suggested she had been crying a lot and sleeping very little. She looked at me sheepishly. "Peter, I'm so sorry for what I did. I don't know how I let Ben convince me to ask you to be part of that, thinking you were submissive and would be into it. Reflecting on the past few weeks, I can't comprehend how I got caught up in all this. Maybe it was his assertiveness and his insistence that it would be great for us, that I would have the best sex of my life, with him and then with you. You must think I'm insane, and I probably was, but Peter, now I've come to my senses. I love you, and I want only you. I'm asking for your forgiveness, and I promise to be the best wife, dedicated to making amends for my actions." "So, Isabella, how was Ben in bed?" I asked abruptly. "Stop, Peter," she pleaded. "After that conversation, I never went further with him. He's so scared of what you might do that he fired me and doesn't want anything to do with me. Besides, he spent 2 nights in the hospital because of what you did to him. He concocted a story about a robbery, and we both went along with it to keep you out of trouble," Isabella explained. "At least he did something right in this mess. But what do you want, Isabella? What are you asking of me?" I questioned. "Peter, I want you. I want to come back home and be your wife for the rest of our lives. I'm asking for your forgiveness. I'll do everything I can to make it up to you. We can get past this and be stronger than ever. I've realized you're the only one I can ever love, and I need you to forgive me. Can I please come home?" she implored. I pondered for a moment. "Isabella, I've thought a lot about this. We've been in love for 2 years and married for 3. Now, after just 5 years together, you're obviously either bored with our life or at least our sex life, and you're seeking something more. You might think you love me, and maybe you do, but I'm certain you don't respect me. You wouldn't have thought of me as a submissive beta male, willing to let you sleep with your boss and then come back to me, if you really understood love or respect. Besides, Isabella, you've already been unfaithful. Ben said you were intimate with him several times over the past few weeks while he fed you this alpha-beta male nonsense. Your desire overshadowed the vows and promises you made to me. And this is only 5 years in. What will happen in 7, 10, 15, or 20 years? How often will you get bored and break those vows? Peter, I promise I'll never do something like this again, Isabella pleaded. You've already done it, Isabella, so don't say never. No, I've thought about this a lot. We don't have kids, our savings are minimal. And our only real asset is the house, which doesn't have much equity. I've decided, Isabella, that the risk of staying with you far outweighs any benefit. I'm convinced that it's only a matter of time before you justify your affair to yourself, and given your recent experience with Ben, next time you might just go behind my back. I don't trust you anymore, and what's worse, I've lost respect for you. I can't be with someone who doesn't respect me and whom I no longer respect. Isabella started crying as I laid out my decision. And her tears continued as I told her we were done. Isabella, we're getting a divorce. You can keep your car, I'll keep mine. We'll split the savings and sell the house. We're both still young, and I hope to start anew with someone who will love and respect me for who I am. I've already hired a lawyer for the divorce, so we can do this amicably, or you can hire your own lawyer. Now let's load the car with your belongings. And you can go and be with as many alpha males as you like. I'll start moving out next week, so we can get the house on the market, I told Isabella firmly. No, Peter, no. Please forgive me. I need you. I love you. I truly respect you. It was just a mistake, one I was dragged into. You have to forgive me, Isabella implored. Isabella, I'm sorry, but I've said everything. Now it's time for both of us to move on with our lives. If our paths cross in the future, let's just nod in acknowledgement and continue on our way. I hope you find what you're looking for, I responded. With that I began loading her things into the car. Once we finished, I simply looked at her, said goodbye, walked into the house, and closed the door, symbolically ending our marriage. Second story. My husband and I have been together for 12 years, married for 10. About 11 years ago, when Wayne and I were living separately, his childhood best friend Brian visited him from Arizona. I met them once for dinner, but that was the only time I interacted with Brian. He mentioned being married with kids, working, and surviving cancer, but I didn't inquire further. Fast forward to the present, Wayne and I have been married for a decade. Throughout this time, I haven't had any communication or interaction with Brian, while Wayne maintains various forms of communication with his invisible Brian. Wayne meets up with him every time he travels to Arizona for business, which is quite frequent. Strangely, when I travel with Wayne to Arizona for business, Brian is never available to meet us, and Wayne always offers different excuses about it. Recently, Wayne shared a successful business deal in Arizona and invited me to join him on a trip to see the new business asset. However, he never mentioned invisible Brian during the initial plans. Later, Wayne decided it wasn't the right time for me to accompany him and revealed that he intended to meet up with Brian instead. Feeling hurt and excluded, I expressed my concerns about being left out of a business trip where Wayne meets up with invisible Brian once again. Wayne defended himself by claiming he was just being transparent and didn't want to upset me. There are more details to consider, but the situation raises questions about who invisible Brian really is after 11 years. Wayne's actions make me wonder if he is manipulating me or not being honest about his relationship with invisible Brian. Is invisible Brian perhaps a code for a mistress? I'm genuinely confused about what has been going on for over a decade. TLDR, husband regularly meets up with childhood best friend on business trips to Arizona. Wife met the friend once 11 years ago, but they haven't interacted since. When the wife travels with the husband, the friend is never available to meet, raising suspicions about potential infidelity. Thanks for joining us on this chapter of Relation Tales. If you were moved by these stories, hit that subscribe button and ring the notification bell. Don't miss out on the upcoming emotional roller coaster of relationships. Your support means the world, and we can't wait to share more compelling tales with you. Until next time, remember, every relationship has a story worth telling. See you soon. Welcome to Relation Tales. Please like this video and subscribe Relation Tales. Today, I'll be sharing a chapter of my life that involves unexpected twists and turns. My journey takes an unexpected route as my wife enters a complicated affair with someone unexpected. Stay tuned to find out how I navigated through this challenging phase in my life. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and let's dive into the story. Listen this first story. My college, Temple University, had 20,000 women students. Deanna, my future wife, was one of the 3 most beautiful women there. One afternoon, the 3 goddesses were seated together in the cafeteria with every guy in the cafeteria lusting after them. When I came over and asked permission to sketch the 3 of them, one of the girls, Sally, and our study buddies, but I didn't know the other 2. Don't you have anything better to do? Deanna Adelbrunette asked. I took her hand and said no. Well, then, she added, your sketch better be good. Of course, it will be good. You 3 ladies inspire me, I said. She she was a 10, and the best-looking girl I'd ever dated was a 6+. Deanna clearly wasn't interested in me until Sally, one of the other 3 gorgeous women, looked at the sketch and gave me an incredibly passionate kiss. Then she winked at me and I understood what she was doing. Deanna looked at the sketch and gave me an equally passionate kiss as she glared at Sally in triumph for having stolen me away. "You're really talented," she said. Sally winked at me again and pointed to Deanna behind her back. Sally knew I was interested in Deanna, and Sally knew how to make Deanna interested in me. She wanted to make her jealous. Sally blew me a kiss as she walked off. Deanna grabbed my hand. "If Sally is into you, you must be someone special. I don't have a boyfriend. Do you have a girlfriend?" I shook my head. "Well, you do now, and we've been together ever since." She was a little bit off, a little bit peculiar and impetuous and possibly even weird, but I guess otherwise she wouldn't have been interested in me. That sketch is now on the wall of our living room along with many other sketches of my wife and children. I don't do freehand sketching any longer. I use a computer and I'm quite conversant with computers. I wondered what she saw in me, but soon I understood. She was very nasty to everyone who tried to speak with her. Many years later I learned that she was on the autistic spectrum. She had Asperger's syndrome. I was the one who could handle her occasional insults, turning them into jokes. I understood I wasn't her top choice, as she had a tendency to insult others who liked her, leaving me puzzled about why they ended things. Our journey began at 18, dating, marrying at 21, and welcoming our first child at 24, relocating to Los Angeles by the age of 26. My wife could go days without saying much beyond basic phrases. She eventually realized that many of her words turned into unintended insults due to a lack of control, leading her to limit her speech. What I didn't fully grasp during our dating days became clear after marriage. She battled with depression. Lengthy crying episodes were not uncommon. And in those moments, I would comfort her, reminding her of the love our children and I had for her. Though some might have chosen a different path, my love for her and our children was too strong, preventing me from ever contemplating abandonment. Perhaps some children thrive after a divorce, but I've never met any of them. Have I mentioned that she was not only the most beautiful woman I ever dated, but the most beautiful woman I ever knew? Some nights I stayed awake thanking the Almighty as I gazed at my beautiful wife. I guess that makes me shallow. I also learned that the harder she worked, the happier she felt. I was the exact opposite. We started a successful ad agency in our senior year. I did the creative work and my wife did everything else. We were a great pair together. We bought a fixer-upper house in an up-and-coming gentrifying neighborhood for very little on because the neighborhood was still dangerous. We spent years and every spare cent remodeling it. We built a media room and a weightlifting room where I worked out almost daily. I was in pretty good shape. I had to be if I wanted to keep my wife because men were always hitting on her. We worked together and lived together 24 hours a day in good times and bad, and I loved every minute of it. Deanna had a difficult time making and keeping friends, so I tried to fill in the gap in her life. 25 years went by in an instant and our third child was born. Then it all went south and I never saw it coming. My wife was changing life. One day she cried in my arms that men no longer stared at her or flirted when she walked into, and she missed and needed that terribly. Every day as she gazed at the mirror and the lines on her face, she cried even though I told her how beautiful she still was to me. She cried that she had missed out on all the fun in life because we married so young. I added that she also missed repeatedly having her heart broken and getting herpes or worse. My wife had never even looked at another man and many had made passes at her. Her faithfulness was the bedrock on which my mental health rested. All that changed when my wife made friends with a woman named Carol with whom we carpooled to our youngest son's elementary school. At first, I was so happy that my wife finally had a friend. She was a real estate agent. I knew her husband, Barry, was a lawyer, but I didn't know he was a divorce lawyer who used his wife to troll for business by breaking up the marriages of women she befriended. As a bonus, Carol would get the listing and commission on the divorcee's house. My wife kept repeating Carol's complaints, comparing me to rich, successful Barry, and began criticizing me for working too many hours and earning too little. I was working extra hours to put our 2 older children through Ivy League colleges. After paying their tuition, there was precious little money left over. But our house had appreciated enormously in value and was now worth almost $2 million. Deanna constantly complained how Carol's husband could buy her a Mercedes, and they had a vacation home in Carmel and took frequent trips. It broke my heart to be such a disappointment to my wife. I had devoted the last quarter of a century devoted to her and trying to make her happy. But clearly she didn't give a damn. Then she and Carol started leaving for a girls' night out every Saturday night. After the first night, Deanna, my Asperger's wife who never knows when to keep her mouth shut, confessed that Carol didn't understand why Deanna settled for me when she could have done so much better and still could. And not a fool, I didn't complain or voice my distrust. I borrowed a friend's car and tailed them on their next excursion. They went to a club and met up with an incredibly handsome younger friend of Carol's who danced too closely with my wife throughout the night. I wanted to walk over to them and knock out the guy, but I just took some photos and waited near my wife's car in the parking lot. If she left with the guy, I would have beaten the shit out of this tall, thin, pretty boy in the parking lot and gone to jail a happy man. But my wife and Carol left without him. I needed to come up with a strategy as I veered back and forth between broken-hearted sorrow and furious anger. I raced my wife home and made a pot of tea for both of us. She told me about her evening and even admitted to dancing with several men, once each. She was lying. I sensed the need to be cautious. It seemed that my wife, sparked by the flirting with the other guy, unleashed a torrent of passion that kept us intimate all night, leaving me eventually pleading for a break. However, in the following week, she became mysterious, spending time in the backyard for secretive phone calls and making undisclosed purchases of alluring clothing, cleverly hidden from my knowledge. When her car mysteriously failed to start on the weekend of her usual girls' night out, I discovered that I had discreetly disconnected the battery. Hoping to temper her newfound interest, eager to mend our relationship, I proposed a different approach, enrolling in a film class at the local college. This way, we could experience unreleased films together and rediscover common ground. My wife seemed to like the idea, but the next day changed her mind. She informed me that Carol said that she shouldn't take a class with me, as it was just an attempt on my part to manipulate her. What does that even mean? What utter bullshit. Undeterred, I bought tickets to the ballet for the coming Saturday night. My wife loved ballet, but she refused because she was again going out with Carol. My marriage was in big trouble. That week my wife and Carol again went to the same bar and my wife sat next to the same man and I sat far away but with an eyesight. Of course, I wore a wig, hat and sunglasses to hide my identity. My wife, who normally didn't drink, was making up for lost time. While my wife was getting drunk, her boy toy had his hands between her thighs and as his hand worked his way upward, she didn't protest but instead leaned in for a kiss. I'd seen enough and knew I had to extinguish this flaming passion she had for her boy toy. Many of life's problems can be fixed with a pitcher of beer, I thought. There were two drunk guys at the next table who ran out of money but were still thirsty. I offered them $500 to buy 2 large pitchers of beer at the bar if after they bought the pitchers they would trip and spill one of the pitchers of beer all over my wife. They accepted, and a few minutes later my wife and her brand new expensive clothes and shoes were drenched with a half-gallon of beer and smelled like a brewery. She cursed at the men and went to the ladies' room to try and dry off. She left the restaurant alone and returned to her car. I followed at a discreet distance. She couldn't keep the car in one lane. She had too much to drink. I phoned the police warning of a drunk driver. I gave them her car make, license number, and direction of travel on Wilshire Boulevard. The police stopped my wife, smelled the beer on her, and arrested her for Dewey. I let her spend the night in the drunk tank before it came to bail her out in the morning after telling her how disappointed I was with her. I told her that I wouldn't bail her out again, and that her girls' nights out were over. She said Carol was right. I was too controlling, jealous of Carol, and didn't want her to have any fun. I said, okay, then I won't bail you out. Call Carol to come bail you out. I decided to walk away. Despite her begging, pleading, and tearful promises to give up her girls' nights out, I reached a breaking point when I had to bail her out of jail. While the outings with Carol ceased, Carol continued to interfere in my marriage. Even a seemingly innocent dinner invitation had ulterior motives. Over dinner, she and her husband subtly probed about my income and our net worth, assessing how much they could potentially gain in a divorce. Their invitation had a secondary agenda. I was known for my proficiency with computers due to my work with graphic programs. Since theirs was malfunctioning, they asked for my help. I suggested they enjoy drinks in the den while I tackled the issue in the office. In a classic tech move, I resolved the problem by simply turning the computer off and then on again, a solution that tends to work like magic. I'm curious by nature and wanted to learn more about my adversaries. It didn't take me long to find the husband's Quicken accounting books in the computer. For 5 years he earned over $500,000 a year, but when I looked at his TurboTax return, I saw that he only reported $20,000 to the IRS. I printed up all this information and put it in my pocket. Underestimating me is never a good idea. If I'm after you, you'll never see it coming, and these two had it coming. That night, after we left, my wife said that Carol had invited her to her vacation home 300 miles north of Land Carmel, California for a week starting Labor Day Friday. I told her that was great. She needed some relaxation. The next day, I hired a private eye to follow her on her trip, or maybe her tryst. I bought a few dozen condoms and placed them in her luggage as a fuck you gesture. At the pie's suggestion, I bought a burner phone so our communication could not be easily discovered by a subpoena during a divorce. As my wife left our house carrying 2 heavy suitcases, she lost balance, tripped, fell, and hit her face on the steep steps, giving herself a black eye. The pie followed her ostensibly to her friend's vacation house. but informed me by phone that my wife didn't pick up Carol, but picked up a man at Carol's house, and they didn't drive north to Carmel, but 100 miles south. I had sent the Pi the photo of the man my wife had danced with, and this was the same man. They ended up in room 515 at a hotel in Laguna Beach. The Pi spoke to me in hushed tones because he told me there were police in the hotel restaurant near him. He asked me what I wanted him to do. On the spur of the moment, remembering my wife's black eye, I instructed him to tell those police officers that a prostitute was being beaten up in that room. I hoped the police could end the party before they had time for sex. 5 minutes later, the Pi informed me that my wife had been marched out of the room fully dressed and arrested for prostitution. Her boyfriend was arrested for assault and battery. An hour later, my wife phoned me crying. She wanted me to bail her out of jail. She wouldn't tell me what the crime was, but only where she was. I played dumb and asked why she wasn't in Carmel, but she refused to answer. Her bail was $5,000. I told her I would drive down after I withdrew the money from our bank when it opened in the morning. I didn't withdraw the money or drive down to bail her out. I wanted her to spend the whole 3-day Labor Day weekend in jail because one night in jail the previous month hadn't taught her a lesson. I showed up at her arraignment and watched her plead guilty in shackles, wearing an orange jail uniform. In the past, I'd seen my wife happy, sad, depressed, and confused, but this was the first time I'd seen her completely defeated and destroyed. She had hit rock bottom. Having so many condoms in her luggage was considered proof that she was a prostitute. She was sentenced to 6 months in jail. The sentence was suspended if she could stay out of trouble for 1 year. She had a lawyer, big surprise, Carol's husband. He also represented my wife's John, who seemed to be very friendly with Carol's husband. My Pi did some research for me and found that the boyfriend had been named in 3 other divorce suits and that Carol's husband represented all 3 wives. I realized that Carol set up my naive wife with a gigolo so she could get a 6% commission on our $2 million house, and her husband make a few $100,000 representing my wife if I filed for divorce, which my wife begged me not to do. Half of the reason I didn't file was because I loved my children, my beautiful, depressed, neurotic, crazy wife, and the other reason was I wouldn't allow that bastard lawyer and his blood-sucking real estate agent wife to make a dime from us. The fact that I would lose my house, younger child, and pay my ex-wife alimony until Judgment Day also motivated me to remain married. Neither did I have any desire to trade my beautiful house for a 1-bedroom walk-up in a crappy neighborhood. My wife finally understood that Carol's friendship with her was an act and that Carol viewed my wife as just a weak-willed, stupid pansy to be fleeced. I explained to my wife that some people can get away with cheating, but karma kept catching up with her, and the next time I would let her rot in jail for 6 months. I also explained that if I ever even thought she looked at another man, I would email her mug shots and conviction papers to everyone she had ever known, divorce her, and because of her drunk driving and prostitution convictions she would lose custody of our children. I also explained that I would on occasion secretly track her whereabouts by myself and sometimes with a private eye. If she strayed, I would know and her punishment would come swiftly and terribly. When I asked if I had been that bad a husband, she said no. She just became addicted to the validation, compliments, and attention from a handsome young man who said she was beautiful and desirable. She also craved the excitement of the clandestine meetings at the club and the planned getaway to Laguna Beach. I said, if you think spending time in jail is exciting, go right ahead and continue your behavior. I'm a really easygoing guy. My last fight was in 9th grade. He was bigger than I was, but I didn't back down, even though I knew he'd beat the tar out of me, and he did. I walked away with a bloody nose. The only damage I inflicted on him was to get my blood all over his shirt. I'm not tough or belligerent unless you try to fuck with me or my family. I may lose, but I won't back down. I took Barry's tax return and financial information to the nearest federal Internal Revenue Office in California Franchise Tax Office. They explained that if my information was accurate, I might be entitled to a reward. I wasn't done fucking with him. Tax evasion is a crime of moral turpitude and grounds for a lawyer or real estate agent to lose their licenses to practice. My final 2 stops of the day were the Real Estate Commission and State of California Bar Association office, with Barry and Carol's financials and tax returns. The forensic accountants of the IRS found that Barry also embezzled money from his clients. The state bar didn't care that he paid a gigolo to break up marriages. I explained that he was a low-life scum who destroyed families. They looked at me as if I was a dull-witted child to think they'd care. Then, I said, low-life piece of shit scum lawyer. I guess that's redundant. What else would you expect of a lawyer? As I stormed out. A few months later, I reveled in the newspaper story about Barry, a prominent local divorce attorney disbarred and indicted for tax evasion. Barry and Carol owed the IRS and Franchise Tax Board over $1 million. The IRS confiscated over $400,000 in unreported cash in his home safe. Barry went to prison for 2 years. His house and cars were confiscated to pay his back taxes. I bought his wife's Mercedes-Benz for a song at an IRS auction. I explained to my wife that living the high life like Barry and Carol is easy if you don't pay your taxes. Next to them, I knew I looked like a failure, with a lot less money than they, because I did pay my taxes. A year later, I received a reward from the IRS of $40,000 and took my wife on a ridiculously expensive vacation to Tahiti where we completed putting our marriage back together. Carol is now an overweight cashier at our local supermarket. I make sure to always be in line at her cash register so I can smile and gloat at her. I also make sure that she notices I own her old car. She and her husband never figured out how the IRS got onto them. Karma is certainly a bitch, but sometimes it needs to be helped along by a screwed over that was 10 years ago. It took a year and that trip to Tahiti for our marriage to return to normal, but my wife learned her lesson, and like Johnny Cash, my wife walks the line. Second story. Cheated on my slightly abusive fiancé of 7 years. I'm 22 and I've just cheated on my fiancé of 7 years. In this last year, me and my fiancé have been super stressed because of a lot of different reasons. This caused our fights to get worse and worse to the point where she slapped me during one argument. She slapped me because in our really bad arguments she breaks down and starts hurting herself, and during this argument when she started doing that I grabbed her hands and screamed for her to please stop. She slapped me, and when I told her I couldn't believe she did that, she told me I deserved it. This was my breaking point, and I told her I don't think we're good for each other and we should separate. But after I told her that, she slowly calmed down and pleaded for me to stay with her. Obviously, a big part of me wants this to work, so I accept her apology. That was about 6 months ago, and that's when I started thinking of breaking up at some point. Since then, we haven't gotten into any major arguments nearly as bad as that one, but I'm still highly unsatisfied in our relationship. I'm unsatisfied because though we may not get to that point again, it's the fact that it happened. Also, ever since she got a new job where it requires her to be more physically demanding and started going to school, she doesn't help around the house. I try to be equal with chores and cooking, as to I do all the cooking and shopping and she does all the cleaning. Problem is, there's so many times every single dish will be dirty because she hasn't washed them in a week. So now it's turned to me cooking, cleaning, washing clothes, shopping and working as well. And I'm fine with doing all of that sometimes as a kind gesture, but she has not cleaned anything for almost 2 months now. Now I do understand that this could be a sign of depression. A person staying in bed all day and not doing anything, I get that. Which is why I offer for us to see a therapist. I've personally booked a meeting to see a therapist for her, but she ended up telling me she doesn't want to talk to a random person about her feelings. So yeah, about a month ago I downloaded Tinder. And last night I told her I was gonna go to the bar with co-workers and then hang out with them at their house. In reality, I met up with a girl my age who was more nervous than me to be on a date. We talked so much that we had to leave because the restaurant was closing. I rented out air and just pretended it was mine because realistically I didn't think I was gonna see her again after this. On the way there we had dumb fun, and at the air we found out we watch almost the same shows and anime. Later that night I can tell that she planned on staying over because her place is an hour away and we were both drunk. So I called my fiancé and told her I was too drunk so I wasn't coming home that night, and well, you know the rest. So now I'm in this state of, I don't necessarily think this new girl I should be my wife, but my current fiancé isn't either. So I ask you, Reddit, am I a shitty person for staying with my fiancé and justifying it by cheating? She gets a husband that cooks, cleans, works, and will do damn near anything she asks, and I get to satisfy my needs with other women. Thanks for joining us on this chapter of Relation Tales. If you were moved by these stories, hit that subscribe button and ring the notification bell. Don't miss out on the upcoming emotional roller coaster of relationships. Your support means the world, and we can't wait to share more compelling tales with you. Until next time, remember, every relationship has a story worth telling. See you soon. Welcome to Relation Tales. Please like this video and subscribe. Relation Tales. Listen this first story. The first time I suspected my wife of infidelity was after my son Matt's 13th birthday. On my way home from work, I picked up some pictures from the drugstore. Julia wasn't home yet, so I sat down and looked at the pictures. What a beautiful day it was. Matt was so surprised when he got home. We found a surprise party with all his friends waiting for him. Looking through the photos, I found a really nice picture of Matt and my friend Steve. It was a close-up of both of their faces. Steve has been my best friend my whole life. My kids call him Uncle Steve and his kids call me Uncle John. We are so close. When I looked at the image of their faces side by side, I noticed something I hadn't noticed before. They had the same color hair, black. They had the same eye color, green. And they had the same narrow nose. They had similar skin tone and facial features. If I hadn't known they weren't, I would have sworn they were father and son. A few others were pictures of kids at a party, but my attention was caught by something in the background. There was Julia and Steve. They were in, I would say, a very intimate position. In fact, it looked like they were about to kiss or had just kissed. I scrutinized the other photos for anything else where they were together, but couldn't find anything. I took the 2 pictures out of the bag and put them in a desk drawer in my home office. The fact that my son looked like Steve, and that I had a picture of Steve and Julia in an intimate-looking pose proved nothing. But I immediately wondered if in hindsight I could recall any other evidence that Julia might have been unfaithful to me. I didn't have much time to think because a few minutes later, Julia walked through the front door, kissed me, and headed upstairs to change. It was something she did every day on her way home from work, and I'd never had any reason to suspect her before. With suspicion flashing through my mind, I headed up the stairs to see if I could catch her doing anything. When I entered the bedroom, Julia was surprised to see me, but didn't act like my presence was unwelcome. "Hey honey, how was your day?" Julia asked, changing into her house clothes. "Not too bad. I picked up the pictures from Matt's party on the way. They turned out great. But didn't we take too many of them? 5 reels of film for a birthday party?" I asked, after all the trouble we went through to make him think he wasn't having a party, only to throw him a surprise party like this one. "I wanted to make damn sure he had enough pictures to remember it by," Julia said. "It was great to invite all his friends, family, and even Steve, Mary, and their kids to the party," I said. Did she flinch when I mentioned Steve's name? There was some movement, but was it natural or was it a reaction to the name being spoken? "Yeah, it was a great party," Julia said. Other than a possible flinch, I didn't get anything else out of her. I decided I would keep an eye on her and Steve as much as possible to see if they were up to anything. I didn't use all the high-tech tracking devices, audio recording, video cameras, and phone tapping, at least not right away, but just started tracking if Julia said where she was going to be. I would then find reasons to call and see if she was there or not. A few weeks later, the body of a missing little girl was found in the lake, and as luck would have it, her family had DNA testing done beforehand, so that she could be identified in case anything happened. Julia gave me the perfect opportunity to find out what was bothering me. "John, I think we should do these DNA cards for the children too. If something ever happens and a body or body part is found, I'd want to know if it's our child or not, wouldn't I?" Julia asked. "You're absolutely right. This girl was missing teeth and the body was pretty badly damaged, so normal methods didn't work. I think having the children's DNA on file is a wise decision," I said. I said I would take all 4 of our children, Matt, Ashley, Hannah, and Sarah, to get tested and put them on file with the county. Once at the family doctor's office, I decided to make the request. "So John, what happened?" Dr. Smith asked. "I would like copies of the tests. It's not that I don't trust the county in terms of keeping the information in case something happens and they need it. It's just that I feel better having copies of them in my home safe," I said. "Sure, John, no problem. Many parents make the same request," Dr. Smith replied. 2 weeks later, I went out of town for a week on business. There I walked into a doctor's office with DNA tests to check myself out. The doctor, a woman I lived with for 8 years, claims I am the father of her 4 children and is now demanding child support from me. I have reason to believe that I am not the father of one or more of them. I have demanded DNA records of the children from her, and now I am asking you to tell me how many of them I should be financially responsible for," I said. "Of course, it's sad when someone says a child is yours when it's not. I've seen several marriages destroyed as a result of this." "Are you saying you are not married to this woman?" the doctor asked. "No, ma'am, we broke up 3 years ago. I'm married to someone else, and all this alimony actually pisses me off. I had the envelope with the results on it before I came home. I hadn't looked at them yet, and the closer I got to getting the results, the less sure I was that I wanted to know everything. When I got home Friday night, there was a note on the table from Julia saying that she and the kids had gone to her mom's for the weekend. Unable to endure an entire weekend to figure out what to do if things were as bad as I feared, I decided to open the envelope, but only after calming my nerves with a glass of scotch. And when I saw the results, I immediately poured another one and drank it quickly. None of my 4 children were actually mine, but it was pretty clear that they had the same father. Having had a good drink, I had fallen out. Around 4 in the morning, I woke up and started thinking about what I should do. I suspected that Steve was the father of my children, but I needed certainty. It was at this point that I decided to get into high-tech. There is a store not far from my house that specializes in surveillance equipment, so on Saturday morning, I went there and bought the whole kit. I installed tiny motion-activated cameras covering every room in the house, sound recorders. I also had tracking devices to put in Julia's car car and Steve's SUV, so I would always know where they both were. I set it all up so that the information was dumped to a computer in the basement that I could access from my laptop from anywhere. I had installed the tracking device on Steve's SUV on Saturday afternoon when he came by and took me with him, since I had called to say that Julia would be out of town all weekend. At least I was sure he wouldn't be with her this weekend. I spent most of Sunday morning going through Julia's things for anything that might give her away. As far as I knew, she didn't keep a diary or notes, and her computer looked clean. In the back of her closet was some sexy lingerie I hadn't seen before, which was another piece of circumstantial evidence. When Julia came home with the kids on Sunday night, I greeted them all with a big hug. That night in bed, Julia just blew me away. "John, you don't worry too much, but I think I'm pregnant," she said. "Pregnant?" I asked her. "Yeah, I think so. I plan to go to the doctor tomorrow to see what he says, but I have a feeling," Julia confirmed. At this point, I decided I was going to go to the doctor to get a fertility test too. Julie and I had been trying to have a baby for a long time before she got pregnant with Matt. I took time off work to be able to nurse her as many times as possible. It was like that with all the kids. I know it's not easy to get pregnant. We went through all that for the first 4 kids. And now she got pregnant without even trying. That seems suspicious to me. I drove to a neighboring town on Monday and went to a clinic where no one knew me. I took the test and waited. My sperm count was above average. This was just another fact to add to the pile. I had a high sperm count. My wife and I had tried many times to get pregnant, and yet it was Steve who impregnated her. I rushed back to work and accessed the information that had been gathered to that point. The tracking devices showed that Steve left for work and then drove to a hotel on the east side of town. Julia's car spent part of the time at the doctor's office and then went to the same hotel. I had seen enough, so I went back to work. That night, Julia was so excited that she was pregnant, that we were blessed with another child. I was holding back as hard as I could from spilling all the information I had and incriminating her. Over the next few weeks, I gathered even more information and decided that they had formed a pretty good routine. They met for a long lunch at the hotel on Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. They always had the same room booked. I took pictures of them going in and out of it, and there was no need to see what was going on inside. This was because on Tuesday and Thursday, they would meet at our house and have sex in our guest bedroom. The more I saw, the harder it was for me to keep from slamming the door. Finally, after watching them for 2 months, I recorded a phone conversation that drove me crazy. "Hey, are you comfortable talking?" Steve asked. "Yeah, John's playing golf and the kids are at their friends' houses," Julia replied. "I've been worried about John lately. He's been acting strange. Do you think he couldn't have found out everything?" Steve asked. "He hasn't figured out anything in 16 years. Why would he figure it out now?" Julia asked. "As for Matt, he's becoming more and more like me every day," said Steve. "So what? John thinks I'm the perfect wife. He'll never suspect I'm cheating on him. And he'll never believe that all 15 years I've been taking steps to make sure I only have children with you and not him," said Julia. "I'm still not sure I approve of that," Steve said. "Take it back now or you'll never touch me again." "Okay, I take it back. I can't wait until Monday." "Baby, I can't Monday. I have a lunch meeting. It's a really big deal. So Tuesday we're just going to need a really long lunch." "Okay, what time should I be there?" Steve clarified. "Around 11. I'll see you then." Steve concluded the conversation. I listened to this conversation on Sunday. On Monday, I took enough information with me to start divorce proceedings based on adultery and went to see an attorney. "So John, what grounds for divorce do you choose?" Dave asked. "Marital infidelity." "Are you sure?" "That's actually hard to prove in our state," said Dave. "Well, maybe you can tell me if there's enough to prove it. Pictures of my wife and her lover in the process of sexual intercourse. I also have video, in fact, even some phone conversations recounting their affair, including one where my wife admits that she deliberately took steps to have children with her lover instead of me. And last but not least, DNA tests that show that none of the 4 children I am raising are mine." "Is that enough?" I asked. "Yes, that should be more than enough. I'll send your wife the divorce papers right away," Dave replied. "Can I pick the time and place where she gets the papers?" "What do you mean?" Dave asked. "Tomorrow at 11 o'clock she is supposed to meet her lover at our house. Can we make it so that she gets them at home, say at 11:30 or 11:45? Handing over the papers at the time she commits adultery would be murderous evidence." "Yes, that's an acceptable idea. Would it be illegal to invite my wife's parents and sisters, a few of her friends, her lover's wife, and perhaps their bosses?" I asked. "I can see you're hungry for a little revenge. Well, if you tell them it's a surprise party in honor of the new baby, and they don't know in advance what they're going to see, it should be fine." "Excellent," I concluded. After leaving the lawyer's office, I made a few phone calls and invited everyone except Mary to come to the surprise party in Julius's honor. Mary, of course, would tell Steve and then he would know something was up and wouldn't go. At 10:45 Tuesday morning, I called Mary and asked her to meet me at our house for a little chat. I made everyone wait quietly in the yard until the party was all gathered for the party. I said Julia was resting inside so we would sneak up and surprise her. Dave was also there with the divorce papers. We sneaked into the house unnoticed and headed for the guest bedroom. I swung the door open and we all yelled, "Surprise!" And there were many surprised faces both in the room and in the hallway. Mary immediately yelled at Steve. Julia's family started yelling at her. Julia started yelling at me. Steve tried to gather his clothes and jump out of the house, but his boss blocked the door and notified him afterward. Amidst all this chaos, Dave calmly walked over to Julia, who was sitting on the bed under a sheet and sobbing uncontrollably. "Julia Davis, you are hereby served with these divorce papers filed by your husband, John Davis. He is seeking a divorce on the grounds of adultery. Mr. Davis is not seeking any form of custody of the 4 children already born or the child in your womb, as DNA testing has shown that Mr. Davis is not the biological father of any of the children. And a recorded phone conversation between you and Steve Wilson states that you intentionally prevented the children from being with Mr. Davis so that you could become pregnant by your lover. Mr. Davis is claiming 90% of the entire estate. A court date will be set for this case unless you accept the terms of these documents." "Good day," Dave said. Dave delivered his speech in a loud, impassive voice almost like a robot. He handed the papers to Julia and left. Both Julia and Steve lost their jobs. Steve divorced Mary. Julia's family, who always liked me, disowned her. I didn't get 90% in the divorce. I had to settle for 75%. But in a separate lawsuit, I got compensation from Steve for preventing me from having children. I love Julia with all my heart, and if I had acted quickly and made a claim against her from the first moment of suspicion, it surely would have broken my heart. Now, however, knowing the depth of her infidelity and treachery, it was easier for me to cut her out of my life. I still see her around town from time to time, and each time she tries to apologize to me, but I don't want to hear it. She cheated on me for years. She deliberately kept me from making her a child so she could have Steve's baby, and then made me believe I was the father. If it wasn't for the fact that I loved her so deeply, I'd want to see her dead. But no matter how much she abused me, I'll always have memories of the good times. The kids were confused to learn that Uncle Steve was actually their father and the cousins were their half-siblings. They all spent a lot of time in counseling because of this, and I'm sorry this happened to them, but it was another measure of Julia's revenge. She wanted Steve's kids instead of me, so now has to live with them hating her for what she did. They still call me daddy when they see me. Second story, girlfriend F, 29, cheated on me. M, 29, on anniversary of my sister's suicide. TLDR, girlfriend cheated while visiting me in NYC on anniversary of sister's suicide. Gaslit me for months, and no one knows about it. She's still involved with one of the men and is likely seeing him on her trip currently. I made a post about this a while back, but now I'm following it up with what I would like to send family and friends. Below is a message I would like to send my ex's friends and family, because it's insane that this happened in secret to me and none of her family or friends know what she did to me. She's still sleeping with one of the guys. It's very unempowering to feel silenced. I feel like she got away with abhorrent behavior. Curious if I should send this to family and friends or not, given they have no idea what my ex did to me. Wondering if there are any legal ramifications. I believe if it was flipped, a man did this to a woman, likely, yes would be the answer. Message: Hi, I'm writing you this message so you know about your friend. We met in NYC, stayed in touch, and dated for a few months a while back. We traveled together around Europe, had a great time, etc. And while we were together, my younger sister committed suicide. It destroyed me. It was and still is a lot to deal with, but it's gotten better with time. A few months later, abruptly ended our relationship with no real explanation other than she was busy, which was jarring. But eventually I was fine and we stayed in touch for about 9 months. After those 9 months, she was visiting NYC again and explained to me she really wanted to be in a relationship with me. I told her I was concerned because of how quickly she ended our first relationship, and I was very scared to get hurt again. She explained to me she would never hurt me again and really wanted to try another time. So we did. A few weeks and I caught her lying a couple times about a few men. She would often exchange contact information with different men and explain to me she forgot and that it was just a social thing or it wasn't that serious. One night she disappeared and didn't text me back until 3 p.m. the next day, and I had no idea where she was. The next day I asked her that if she was cheating on me to please just end things. I was in tears and just didn't want to be hurt this way. She said okay, and that she wasn't cheating and said, if I'm gonna cheat, I'll just end things. Which is a weird thing for your girlfriend to say, but whatever. Most people just say I'm not a cheater. But whatever. For the rest of the time in NYC, I caught her lying a few more times about her encounters with other men. She told me that I was insecure, I had trust issues. She told me that I was not a man, and that she couldn't be with someone who kept thinking she was unfaithful. She told me she was the most trustworthy person ever and was extremely loyal. But after asking her questions concerning weird situations with other men, she got so angry with me that she started screaming and repeatedly hit me in the chest. This wasn't just once, she hit me on more than one occasion. She was my girlfriend, so I really wanted to believe her, but I felt like she was lying to me and making me go crazy, and I had to know the truth. So I had one of my friends approach her at a bar and see if she would engage with him. After a few minutes, she agreed to go on a date with him just minutes before I arrived at the bar. She immediately explained that instead of going back to my hometown to meet my mom, she wanted to hang out by herself that weekend and just wanted some alone time. But instead she just went on a date with my friend. After realizing that I set her up, she broke up with me. We were still seeing each other after we broke up. And during this time she asked me if she could sleep with other men in addition to me. She mentioned a man by name, a person I had met, a person she told me hit on her at a bar, but she handled it on her own and told him she wasn't interested, something she brought up to me a month or two after it happened. I wondered why she told me this story so late. She asked me to not reach out to him and that she would feel unempowered as a woman if I got involved since she handled it on her own. So I let it go. But after her asking to sleep with another guy, I felt that something was wrong. We hung out the last few weeks and I asked her about this man a few times because things seemed weird. Upon her return to Argentina, I confronted her once more about the events involving another man. Shockingly, she admitted they had engaged in a sexual encounter on the night of January 31st divided by morning of February 1st, fully aware that it coincided with the anniversary of my sister's suicide. Ironically, on that very evening, she had inquired about my sister and my emotional state, offering support for the upcoming night. I assured her I was okay and that we would meet the next day. However, after our conversation, she went to a bar and cheated on me. The following day, she showed up at my apartment, seemingly oblivious to her actions, bearing gifts and candles to console me regarding my sister. For months, she gaslit me, attempting to convince me of my own supposed insanity. Despite expressing the deep emotional pain her actions caused, she callously remarked, "Cheating on you on the day your sister killed herself has nothing to do with her. The day it happened doesn't matter. Don't try to make me feel bad." I said sorry, get over it. She adamantly refuses to offer a genuine apology for her egregious behavior. Discovering that she maintained contact with the other man through mutual friends, I questioned her about why she cheated twice, despite my suggestion to end the relationship. Her response was dismissive, claiming, "Sorry, lol. I should have dumped you sooner. All the guys I've been with are cool with me. I don't understand why you can't just be cool with me. You're so uncool and controlling. I've cheated on other guys before, it happens." Following this exchange, she blocked me on Instagram and WhatsApp. The mental and emotional toll of these events on me has been overwhelming. I contemplated the possibility of working through things and visiting Argentina. However, when I raised the topic with her, she responded with, "Only come if you're over it. I don't want you to make me feel bad for what I did." It seemed absurd that she was more concerned about herself while I was grappling with the hurt. Over the past few months, I've sought therapy to unpack the impact of everything that transpired. I'm grateful for the unwavering support from my friends and family during this challenging time. Despite this, she seems unaware of the extent to which her actions have negatively affected me. Instead of offering an apology for the pain she caused, she dismissively labels me as insane and suggests I should be over it by now. I'm reaching out to share my experience because I believe you should be aware of who truly is. Until she acknowledges the harm she inflicted upon me, I fear she may treat others similarly. My hope is that you can contribute to her personal growth and encourage more respectful treatment of others. While I cannot forgive her for the impact on me, our relationship, and the memory of my sister, I still wish her the best. I hope you can assist her in becoming a better person. Thank you for taking the time to read this. Thanks for joining us on this chapter of Relation Tales. If you were moved by these stories, hit that subscribe button and ring the notification bell. Don't miss out on the upcoming emotional roller coaster of relationships. Your support means the world, and we can't wait to share more compelling tales with you. Until next time, remember, every relationship has a story worth telling. See you soon.